Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Truck for this time, yesterday's Enterprise. Yeah, it sounds like that episode we hated from season 1 of TOS, but it's not. And you'll hear us talk about it. Spoiler alert. We like it too. I bet you did as well. Give it a listen. Yesterday's Enterprise. Also, you might be able to listen to some of the stuff on there. Get on our Facebook page. It's All Been Truck before, and we'll listen to you. You tell us what you think about what we're saying. Get off of Reddit. We know you're busting us over on Reddit. Come to our Facebook page. Do it to our face. Show some courage. Actually, come there and it'll be a lot of fun. We'll mix it up. It's All Been Trucked Before. We're on Facebook. We're on now. This is Yesterday's Enterprise.
Welcome out to another episode of It's All Been Trucked Before. Your regular hosts are here.
This is Steven.
And the outgoing Keith. Just my last episode before I joined the cast of the other Star Trek podcast.
Can you name this? Keith other Trek podcast?
Keith has just been named the new co-host of the official Star Trek Pod Directive with Paul F. Tompkins and Tawny Newsome.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. No.
You didn't know you'd been named to that podcast?
I thought he was going to be on the Not So Great generation.
Actually, it's a show called It's Not Quite Been Trekked Yet.
Jimmy-Jerome is here as well. And we're here to talk about not today's, but yesterday's Enterprise. First impressions.
I liked it. I liked it a lot.
You liked it even though you didn't recognize that blonde woman that was in it?
You know what? I did chuckle to myself. When I knew she was going to be in it, but I still had a little laugh at the top. And I enjoyed her a lot in it, among other things. I thought it was going to be a different episode than it was, and I ended up enjoying what it was. I really like this episode a lot.
Same couple of things for me. For some reason, I had a different image in my head of what was supposed to be happening. And I remembered eventually, this, okay. I had to take a couple moments to figure out what was going on. And I really did enjoy what they were doing. Also, I'd managed to forget that she was going to be in this episode. And just that little flash of, how sometimes they show a cell from the show or from the episode before it comes up and she was in it. I was like, I should have been as upset as I was in that moment, but anyway, it didn't ruin the episode. So that's.
I think this is one I haven't seen, and it's definitely one that I knew about. Like, there's a special Tasha Yar action figure that was released for this episode. That the original release went for like thousands of dollars. It was like the most valuable Star Trek action figure. And I got it on the re-release when they packaged it with 2 other rare figures. But if you bought the rare re-release, of course, they weren't worth anything. You had to have the original to make the money. I kind of knew what it was. Like, I knew the Enterprise C was doomed. I knew there was an alternate universe and Tasha Yar would return with them to face her death. But I did not know the details of the episode. And I liked it, but maybe not quite as much as I was expecting to, just because Enterprise C, Tasha Yar's back. To me, in my head, that was really big. And this story didn't feel big. Like, there were big elements, but it felt like a small love story. It felt like a Tasha episode, one that we didn't get during her run. And it also kind of felt like a do-over of your death was meaningless. We're sorry. We've regretted it the last couple of years. Come back. We'll give you a do-over and give you a nice, noble death.
Yeah, they make it very pointed. We'll get into that later.
That sounds like you knew, I think, a little bit too much to really enjoy how that was going to unfold, because I completely forgotten where it was going. And to know that it was going to culminate in her leaving, that would have been kind of, well,
I mean,
anyway.
If she stayed, she would have just disappeared anyway.
Perhaps, but I'm just saying, knowing the twist at the end, when maybe it was predictable to some extent. I mean, certainly by the time you got to a certain point, but
you didn't know Tasha was going to go with the Enterprise.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't know where it was going to end up exactly when I first started the episode. So I think that would really kind of have ruined the progress for me.
Yeah, I didn't know that's what was going to happen. I in fact, at the top, I thought it was a mirror episode, because I thought when they did the glitch thing, there's like, so I thought it was Picard was on and those guys were on one. And 2 different Enterprises with the same people. And once I realized what it was, I was like, this is still cool. So this is Tasha .0. Is that what this is? Is that what this episode is?
Oh my God.
I love that I beat Keith for that.
That's good. That's real good. Wow. No, it's an alternate Tasha, obviously. She will appear, Denise Crosby will appear in one more episode as Tasha Yar, the series finale of the show. But before then, she will play another character for a few episodes. So this isn't the last we've seen of Denise Crosby in Star Trek The Next Generation.
Do you think if we'd had this Tasha Yar, she might have stuck around in the other timeline?
I can't say that I liked this one any better than. I mean, she felt the same to me, and I didn't really like her in the first place. I liked Denise Crosby in other things. I'm not a fan of her as Tasha Yar. I actually was. That was part of my disappointment with this episode. Is it was such a Tasha episode, and I'm not a big Tasha fan.
Wow. Okay.
I think that was it. I think that is the main reason I was kind of like, eh.
I liked, and I did like her more in this episode than I have, and I think some of that. Not only was she better written, the whole her thing with her and Chris McDonald.
I love Chris McDonald.
I love Chris McDonald, and his character was great, and he was in a Wrath of Connie uniform. There were a lot of great moments in this episode for me. I don't know if I'd say it's a great episode, but like I said, I liked it a lot. So
Christopher McDonald is best known for Thelma and Louise, Quiz Show, Happy Gilmore. I loved him in Harry's Law as Tommy Jefferson.
I had the impression he did usually more villains or something like that, and it's that Happy Gilmore that was right there, and I was like, yeah.
You're right. Kristen McDonald does play a lot of jerky guys, but not in this. He was heroic and sweet.
And that might have been another reason I loved him, because his name in Thelma and Louise is Daryl Dickinson, which I can't think of a more jerky name than Daryl Dickinson. And he plays them great. He's great at him, and he's great in this too. He's just a good he's a good actor.
I mean, maybe Dick Dickinson could have been more jerky, but
I will say this was his only appearance in Star Trek, and I'm a little disappointed by that. It makes me sad the way they didn't use him again when they reused how many people.
That was my thing. Well, it was not even so much using Chris McDonald again. It was using this character. I was like, oh, he's going to die, so we'll never get to see him. Yeah, I just really like the character. I liked him and Tasha, and Third Intensity was cool. And he was very Riker to me, and which of course means he's kind of Kirkish, which means I enjoy.
He was very much Kirk in 2009. The lieutenant helmsman has to step up and command the ship.
Yeah.
Although Kirk would have found a way to live. He would have cheated.
Yeah, right. That's right.
That's one of the questions I was going to ask way at the end, and apparently you know. So had they referred to this moment in canon at some point already? As far as C being involved in the rescue and not surviving, do we know they didn't survive for certain?
I think I'm pretty confident in saying they did not survive, because that was kind of the whole thing, is they needed to self-sacrifice to stop to prevent war with the Klingons, and the war was prevented, so therefore they self-sacrificed. Yeah, at this point in Trek history, I don't think we knew what happened with Enterprise B or C. So we jumped from A to D, and people were like, oh, well, what about those other two? But we had that big time jump, so eventually we will see the Enterprise B as well. So we are going to get glimpses of both of them. But again, for that one, I think it's just in one film, and we're done. It's in a film. So we get, a nice big look at it with Captain Alan Rickman.
I like that about the this that kind of giving people something to kind of wonder about and wait for an explanation for B and C. But I don't know. It still seems to me that they imply that it could have worked even if they'd rescued them and survived. I mean, the Klingons could have taken that gesture as being helpful too. So
I think we'd hear about it if they survived.
Yeah, I would have liked it if a few things ended up changing just because of their interaction, whatever that might have been. Not something big, of course.
That's kind of sad we didn't get to see them die that heroic death. If you made it a two-parter, we could have gotten a little more.
I want to see Chris McDonald's character being resourceful and making things last longer and taking some Klingons with them.
Romulans.
Sorry, Romulans.
Just
defending the Klingons.
Klingons too.
No, defending the Klingons.
Oh, you're right. You screwed it all up.
Like the Lost theory, from the series. This is like a what happened situation. Like maybe this was supposed to happen. Maybe they're supposed to come through the time rift, bring Yar back, last just long enough to do whatever, maybe even survive. But the survival would be too messy, honestly. And I think that's one of the reasons why they wouldn't have wanted to do it, and why they just said, would be fine with you, assuming they didn't, because, that alternate version of Yar surviving would really mess things up, I think. So
are you trying to hint at what's to come with the other character that Denise Crosby plays?
Well, no, I'm just saying.
Okay.
Well, I don't remember yet.
Oh, cool.
Oh no. Cool. Oh man.
Cool. I'm glad you don't remember. Anyway, no, I think it did always happen. I think yeah, this wasn't something that went wrong. I think this has always happened. And what's interesting about it too is nobody remembers it. I mean, the Enterprise C crew and Yar would have remembered it, but they died before they could tell anybody. So the Enterprise D crew is never aware that this even happened to them. And that's kind of an interesting thought bubble episode too, that this thing happens basically in a bubble that pops. And nobody outside the bubble even knew the bubble existed. I mean, Voyager does a similar thing. Not in the same way, but they do an episode where nobody ever finds out what happened really in that episode. It's all kind of erased, but I kind of like that idea. And on the other hand, I also kind of feel like, well, it was just wasted then. It's kind of like when they get in the time loops and all the things that happen in the time loops, nobody remembers except that last time through, except like the one person that's out of time.
Yeah. I mean, there is that, but it's
Guinan remembered. So there's your one little thing at the end.
Did she remember completely, or did she just feel it?
I doubt she remembers completely, but she remembered meeting Yar, and we clearly established in this episode she wasn't on the Enterprise in the first season when Yar was there. But at the end of the episode, she asked Geordi to tell her about Yar, which I think proves she remembered at least part of it.
I was going to say, I think there's still room for doubt there, simply because that she certainly would have heard of her death at some point being on the ship.
But why now? Why now?
I'm saying that she has the feeling, the impression left that, hey, I'm wondering about her. Not necessarily, she wouldn't necessarily remember everything that happened, but she would feel something to wonder about her.
See, I don't think she remembered the details of what happened, but I kind of feel like, how in the alternate timeline, she knew it was wrong and she recognized Yar and knew that Yar was supposed to be dead. I think it's things like that she would feel afterwards, was my assumption.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
It didn't make me think about it at the time, but now that makes me think of Donnie Darko, which, if you haven't seen Donnie Darko, but that's kind of what happens at the end of Donnie Darko in a number of ways, is it's alternate timelines and people don't necessarily remember all of it, but they kind of do. So that's kind of what Guinan does here.
It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Her people are so sensitive, the Orions, which I think is funny because like the beginning of the Aryan, the Aryan, like Arl, like hearing, they listen a lot. They're a race of listeners.
I love her final line. And I think that goes to your point, Jim, of this is kind of a, hey, you know what, Tasha Yar, we didn't do you right. We're going to give you a much better episode and send off. But I just thought that last line was kind of tied everything together.
To me, that one felt forced though. Like the whole concept of giving her a better send off because they did it wrong felt
that part,
felt forced and breaking a fourth wall in a way.
It didn't dawn on me watching it until you mentioned it. Yeah, I didn't feel that way.
That's the way I felt as the episode ended. That was what I wrote down. My impression was.
My problem was other than the fact that they've been at war forever with the Klingons, was like, I like this timeline better.
Why did you like the timeline better?
I guess maybe I found it more interesting. Maybe I liked it. Wasn't the nice and I just read this somewhere else. Nice and tidy Enterprise, I guess. They'd seen some stuff.
So what I'm hearing, Steven, is you want a crew that goes through some dark, awful war, and Starfleet is on the verge of being wiped out of existence. You're gonna love Deep Space Nine.
It feels more like today, is what he's saying.
For one episode, at least, yeah.
Oh, well, if it's just one episode, you're not going to love Deep Space Nine. Deep Space Nine was like, hey, that alternate timeline in the Enterprise, let's make it a series. Let's jump into the beginning of the episode because we've kind of been skipping around. Yeah. The very first scene in the episode, honestly, was my favorite scene in the whole Yesterday's Enterprise, and it was a monumental one because Worf, for the first time, tries prune juice.
So is that something he ends up loving?
Yes, it's a part of his character for the rest of the franchise. He loves.
Did not know that at all.
That makes sense for a Klingon.
Yeah.
He introduces like everybody on Deep Space Nine to prune juice.
Really liked that opening. I was just like happy all the way through it. There's just something about the way it was playing, and also the concept of what they were doing there. I said that something that feels like they can and should do a little bit more often, but it would only work if they did it sparingly. The idea of aliens really being into some earth-based delicacy or food or animal or whatever that people can get their head around. So I had put like Alf with cats and like E.T. with Reese's Pieces or something like that. Something people go, oh yeah. And this is like that could be like a really cynical marketing thing too. But
I love cats and Reese's Pieces. I don't love eating cats though.
When I got to the end of the episode, I felt like they gave this scene to Worf just as like, you're not in the rest of the episode. Here you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Troy is hardly in the episode at all, so she didn't get the same treatment. But Worf, it was like, consolation prize.
Well, was the idea that, because we kind of talked about that Worf kind of picked up a lot of Tasha's, he got a little more story with her gone and was essentially her replacement. So I guess it kind of makes sense in a way. But
well, no, he wasn't there because they're at war with the Klingons.
Right.
So they would have never had a Klingon in Starfleet.
No, that part I get. But as far as from we're going to do this episode and we're not,
Yeah, well, no, it's I was about to say something very similar. There are a couple ways to look at it, and I hadn't looked at it the way that Jimmy did, which is, again, a little bit cynical, but it is, no, I mean, from a pragmatic point of view of we need to give the actor something to do this episode, here's what you get to do. But then there's also the story type symmetry of here's where we are with the Klingons right now in Star Trek history for maybe somebody who's hopping in again. They don't really understand.
The Klingons are so friendly; they're drinking prune juice.
Something like that. At least they're on they're on the Enterprise. They're on good terms. Yeah. Here's where we are. Here's the baseline. Or again, as Stephen was saying, this was Yar's counterpart eventually.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good point. What did you think about Worf saying he needs a Klingon woman? Earth women are too fragile.
Yeah,
break them.
I know we've talked about this before, and I don't remember where we left off, but I felt this time, is he bragging?
So to me, and this may be, I may be reading into it based on the direction I know Worf's character is going, which is he becomes definitely the comedic relief of the show. Like he becomes a very funny character. To me, I was thinking he was kind of putting Guinan on and just kind of seeing if he could get a reaction out of her. Although we do know from future episodes that he is not exaggerating about broken bones and torn ligament when he actually gets a sexual partner. So it's not something he's just making up or exaggerating.
So, because I read it in my Earth brain that eventually he was talking about, because this is something Earthmen do. I thought he was talking about, I'm trying to find a way to make this clean enough for this podcast to get the point across.
No cursing.
Yeah, it sounded like
7 words you can't say on television.
Yeah, I wrote an alternative, but I'm going to try and avoid that too. It sounded like he was essentially like, "Oh, I'll tear that up." That's what I was getting.
Yeah, it did.
Oh, wow.
And I guess alternatively, Jimmy, and I thought this is where you were going, was he might be, in almost every Earth guy who I've heard say that, they were writing a check they couldn't cash or deliver on. They were bragging about something they've never done and they probably never will.
He's the guy who says he's very well endowed and then he drops his pants and he actually is.
All right, I actually had a third perspective. I had a third perspective on it, and I was thinking first of all of like earlier seasons when they did the thing with
Kalar.
Yes, Kalar. They showed their love scene essentially with the whole hand thing and like the rough play, and there's that. But then I also kind of thought it was more of the opposite of retcon in this instance. It's sort of like the writers were writing too big a check to cash later, because it seems like they soften Worf's character as he goes along, but they were trying too hard to be like, oh, I'm a big tough Klingon, and this is what we're like, kind of.
When he gets married in Deep Space Nine, he does not marry Klingon, not a human either, but a species that I would imagine is as fragile as a human, and they are constantly in sickbay for injuries because of their lovemaking. So
I guess that's fun, but it's just no. I mean, as far as keeping the bit going, great, but it feels too, I don't know.
That just makes me want to sleep with Klingon women more. I don't know about you.
I would want to do the Family Guy cut to where they come in, they're like, "Yep, broke another bone," and then we see what actually happened, which is just, they're trying to do it in an awkward position and smash through the coffee table and destroy it.
I saw that episode of Grey's Anatomy.
Or they're playing ping pong or something, and it's just something completely unrelated to sex.
Boy, this is worse than the time Worf tried to have sex with Troy, and you cut to it. Yeah, whatever.
That would definitely be a Family Guy cut scene, and you cut to Worf over Troy's bloody corpse.
Oh God! But that's another.
Did
that's
you feel
kinda,
that?
That's kind of a counterexample to me, or rather, something that supports what I'm saying. I mean, how sturdy are Beta Zeds? I don't know. It just doesn't seem like it would fit with the.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. From the wharf scene, we get a change all of a sudden on the Enterprise. And at first I thought it was going to be just a lighting change, but no, they built new bridge sets and everything.
Yeah.
And then Guinan's like, oh, something changed. I agree with you, Stephen. My first thought, even though I knew it wasn't true, was it definitely felt like they were trying to make you think it was a mirror universe.
Yeah.
The belts played into it for me. Fashion, I guess.
Fashion.
We had the belts and the collared uniforms, so they were like variations on the regular.
Yeah.
And at first glance, I think it felt like it was going to be a mirror universe, even though it definitely was not.
Right. Yeah.
That was one of my first thoughts. I thought it was some other time travel thing. I thought it was maybe even. I like time loops. We'll get there eventually, but that's kind of my thing. This entire series so far is I keep going. Is this a time loop episode? Is this a loop? Is this a loop? And it's not. It took me a while to remember where they were going with this or figure it out even. I like the way they played it out. It really wasn't. I mean, they spelled it out eventually, but it still didn't feel like they were hitting you over the head with it. It came up somewhat naturally in the course of the captains having to have a conversation about what was going on. It felt organic to me.
I will say that they ended the cold open great because they show us the Enterprise C and then go to the credits. And that's just a great thing to like cliffhang on before you do the theme song. The Enterprise C was presumed destroyed, at least in this timeline. So I guess in the real timeline, 22 years ago, which made me think, because the Enterprise D is only a couple years old. I'm pretty sure it's new when Picard takes command. Certainly seems like it. So they went almost 20 years without an Enterprise. And that made me think for a minute, because we went straight from regular Enterprise to Enterprise A, but that makes sense because it was still Kirk and his crew. There was continuity there. And at that point, by the time Kirk retired or stopped being captain, the Enterprise was such a legendary starship. We know for a fact that shortly after the Enterprise A was retired, the Enterprise B was launched, like without delay, because we see that in a film that Kirk's still around. It's, just into his retirement or admiralcy. And I believe it's Excelsior class, which is pretty cool because I love the Excelsior class. Yes. And so then I would assume that after the Enterprise B is destroyed, they probably put a C together pretty quickly too, because, you keep that status going. But if you've had two unremarkable captains that were not Kirk level in your B and C, I mean, maybe Garrett would have been great. Maybe she didn't get the chance because she was destroyed. But if you have Harriman, who was fine, but I'd imagine there aren't any Kirk level adventures that are going to, I mean, there's a couple of books of Captain Harriman, but I haven't read them. All right. It's been a while. But yeah, if the B and the C weren't as impressive, then it makes sense to mothball the Enterprise for a couple of decades. And then somebody goes, hey, you know what we should do? Let's name our new starship class, our new flagship, the Enterprise. Because that's one of those names we all read about and admire. Yeah. We just haven't had one in a while. So that line of history made sense to me.
I really like that. That's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll see. So I mentioned Captain Garrett, who's played by Trisha O'Neill, best known for the movie Titanic, and then this, and then Babylon 5, and then she's also in Deep Space Nine is what she's fourth best known for on here. Looking at her Trek credits real quick, she's in 2 episodes of Next Gen, but as 2 different characters, and then she's only in 1 episode of Deep Space Nine as a 3rd different character. So she plays aliens a couple times, but this is all we see of Garrett. I liked her. I mean, I think she, like Harriman, is no Kirk or Picard, but I think she's probably a fine captain, and as a supporting character, I liked her.
Yeah, like Castillo, I'd like to see more of her adventures, but there's only so many Starship adventures we can see. I guess unless I don't want to write my own fan fiction.
I'd say we can probably see maybe 3 or 4 Starship adventures.
Yeah.
Tops, yeah. maybe all right, 5 max.
I mean, she clearly is heroic, though, because she's ready to go die, even though she dies before that. And then we see Tasha on the bridge, which, of course, is going to be a big moment from everybody. Mm-hmm. And Wesley is a real ensign, which instead of the acting ensign, which is a change that made sense to me, because I would imagine in this kind of alternate world, they would get more people out the door of the academy and into the ranks a little quicker.
Oh, that makes sense. And a lot of people probably died, so we got promoted.
Wait,
do
so
think-
what was the indication that he was something other than
He wore the real uniform,
Oh, huh.
which he will later in the series when he becomes a real ensign.
I didn't even notice that he wasn't already wearing a real.
No, he normally wears that like gray version of
Okay.
the uniform.
Okay, yeah.
He wore a real black with the red uniform. The C, as Steven mentioned, and this I guess should have been part of our fashion, but the C wore movie uniforms, which to me was stretching credibility on how long those uniforms are still in existence, and I feel like was a way for them to save budget.
Yeah, they looked similar, but not exactly the same, but close enough that I was like, whoa, wait. But they still had the tie here, and they looked more metal or something, maybe.
But given how quickly we've seen Star Trek uniforms change in every era of Star Trek that's actually been covered on screen, the fact that uniform was being used for more than 50 years.
I think you're right.
Was it the same? I mean,
it's similar.
More
It
symmetrical.
It was close enough that unless they took it out of service and brought it back as like a retro look, I don't know why they were still wearing it.
I don't know.
And I like those uniforms. I don't think they make any sense, but I like those uniforms.
I do too.
I mean,
you can't tell rank or department at first glance like you can with everything else.
Yeah, but the whole like, oh, I'm buttoning this and I'm doing this thing. It's like, what the hell? But
yeah, I don't think they're practical either. But I think that was the era where they tried to keep the heat lower on the starships to save energy. So they had to wear coats. They also, and this actually is a problem throughout all Next Generation, but I noticed in this episode, they had those boxy flashlights that are super impractical because it takes your whole hand to hold them. Yeah. And they're just like a box that shines light. I think that's so dumb.
This is into the Star Wars part of it too, but when Guinan's like, oh, something's not right. And I said to Colleen, I said, Guinan's got a bad feeling about this.
Oh, I thought you were about to say felt a disturbance in the Force.
Hey, we were on the same track. and this is, spoiler alert, this is why she's my most annoying of the episode, even though I actually love her later scenes, Guinan's later scenes. Her whole like, something's wrong. Well, what is it? I don't know. It's like, what? And then Picard just keeps getting angry with her. And he was like, his annoyance. I was just like, I'm right there with you, Picard. Just say what is going on. And I understand. And then Data had a better answer for why, because they're in that meeting and Data's like, well, maybe her race has a certain feel for things, they can't quite put into words, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, Data, I will accept your answer. I'm so frustrated, but I'll accept your answer as to why she can't say exactly pinpoint, like, here's the deal. But yeah, it was just like, it's that thing we've talked about in other episodes, I think, where it's like, just cut to the chase. It's not a dramatic reveal. We know something's up. Just tell us what's going on.
Bite your tongue. Guidance perfect.
I thought she was, but no longer.
I found it realistic, or more realistic, that she wouldn't be able to just spell it out like, I sense it. It's just it even felt like as the episode went on, she got a little bit more. Clarity. It's like she was triangulating on it or something. She could kind of feel more. Right off the bat, she could able to spell it out. Granted, again, that's kind of like a plot device. Maybe that's what you were feeling, like the contrivedness of it.
Yeah.
She makes a point of saying, you've known me a long time. You need to trust me. And I get that. And I don't think she should have to explain herself. He should understand that sometimes she just gets these feelings and she can't articulate them. Did you catch when we were in sickbay and they called for Dr. Salar on the speaker?
No.
Yeah. She's mentioned a number of times in the series after we don't see her anymore. This isn't the first time.
So she was the Vulcan version of Kalar.
Yeah, the same actress. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my God. I didn't catch that. That's great.
That gets to one of my other notes in there. When Crusher's on the Enterprise C and she's like, transport me directly to sickbay. I'm like, we learn more about the transporter every week. But
I think we've seen that before.
We've had a lot of that lately where they're like, transport it. Yeah, we're going to transport a whole shuttle into a...
yeah. No, I think we've seen transport to sickbay before, though.
Transport the shuttle into my quarters. What?
That's how Riker brings over his dates.
There has certainly been precedent, but it does seem arbitrary sometimes what they can and can't do.
Well, it gets to that question of why do we even have these pads we stand on? Why do we have a transporter room?
Well, we got to that too because the acceleration properties. It's usually for, wasn't it? I mean,
so we know the Federation starship destroyed defending the Klingons averts the war, which is pretty cool, and I buy that. I also buy the long war and half of Starfleet gone, and Picard saying, it's not common knowledge, but within 6 months it's going to be gone. What I don't buy is that the entire Enterprise D main crew is still intact in this timeline. That's so horrible. Like, they would have forced Riker to take his own command by now because they're shorthanded. There would have been things like, and they probably wouldn't have all come together. And that's what bothers me about most of these alternate things. I hate when the whole cruise just happens to still be together.
Well, Worf wasn't
no
there,
sense. Worf, because of the Klingon, and I didn't even notice at first that Troy wasn't there either. It took a while for me to notice there was no counselor on board, which makes sense because it's more warlike.
Yeah.
But other than that, like, you've got 9 main characters and 7 of them are still there. 8 if you count Tasha because she was there before. 8 out of 10. That's just lazy. I mean, it's because you want to see your characters, but I hate that trite conceit. It's why I now don't care for the Star Trek 2009 film. The coincidence of getting them all together is just ridiculous.
I don't know. I don't know if I can't argue with the logic on that. And it's just it's funny to see me. It's funny for me to see you on this kind of rant, I guess. Too.
You notice in Universe Journey when we deal with the Equa Dimension, it is not nearly that neat because it bothers me so much.
I have to think about it, but all right. So I mean, that leads me to the question of what you would have done differently for this episode. You just would have maybe had a few more characters in the opening and just not use them at all. As far as the actors go, they're like there with Worf trying prune juice. Or would you maybe have them show up in a different ship at some point or talking to them?
No, I mean, we would have kept Picard and like one other lead character, maybe Data, and none of the rest of the crew would have been there.
Wow.
It would have been a different crew.
Could Pulaski have been in an urn on Picard's
Pulaski would have been... I would have loved if Pulaski was there. If it was Picard, Pulaski, Data, and Yar, it's still stretching credibility, but I would have been so much happier.
What if Gomez was there?
No, Gomez is the chief of engineering.
Again, it's too many people returning from the original. I think Data should have been XO. Yar mentions she was on the Enterprise for 4 years straight out of the Academy, which does not quite line up with the Enterprise D timeline as we know it, because the Enterprise D in our timeline was launched like 2.5 years ago. Well, but then I was like, well, different circumstances. They're probably shoving starships out faster to war.
Sure. Yeah.
But I do want to know how she was made a lieutenant and chief of security so quickly out of the Academy on the flagship of the fleet. Sure. And if that lines up in our real timeline, that she would have only been out of the Academy a year and a half or so, and she was made security chief on the flagship, that seems forced to me.
Well, I mean, I guess the idea is that she has a strong aptitude for it or something.
And a lot of people kept dying.
Oh, back to the other thing. The one thing that I will say that works to its credit, the idea of having all the, too many people together like that is for the purpose of obfuscating what's going on. Because as I said, I was like, what's the mirror universe is what you first start to think. And I like the way that it kind of unfolded differently. It kind of caught me off guard. And that would have, the reason why that happens is because you had so many people together. You figure, oh, here we go. This is the opposite or something. But again, I still agree with you for the most part.
My next note, we had Guinan with Yar and that really weird, awkward scene between the two of them. And I liked that scene. I'm not complaining about it.
Yeah, I did too.
But I like Guinan a lot.
Yeah.
I like Guinan in this episode so much.
Well, and I think that's when it starts to turn where it's like, at that point, I guess I start to believe in Guinan's Spidey sense, for lack of a better term, where it's like, okay, now I get it.
And also, she was still chief of the bar on a warship because that's how valuable she is to Picard.
Yeah, well, and you drink more during war.
I did not question her presence because she's on the Enterprise because of Picard, and that should have been the same in either timeline, I think.
What is a TKL exactly?
You said it was like a ration.
You said it was rations, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have time to eat, so they just take a quick nutrient drink and they're good.
Oh, I thought it was an actual alcoholic drink because I was going to try and make one.
Yeah, blend your whole dinner into a smoothie.
That's 5 years from now.
And add a little vodka. And just add a little vodka.
Prune juice and TKLs. That's it.
You know what? The character that bothered me in terms of acting and character, although I kind of get it, was Picard, because he was so frustrated with Guinan, and then he was so set on, there's no way I'm sending these people to die. But then, like a scene later, he's talking to his staff, and he's like, these people have to go and die. But again, the reason I'm not upset about it is because he can express private thoughts in front of Guinan or Garrett.
Yeah.
But when the mission's decided, you have to say something else in front of your crew.
Yeah.
So while that did bother me a little, I kind of got it.
Yeah, I couldn't think of when he was, and I get the sentiment of like, well, whatever he says, sending them back would be a death sentence, but it's like, what's the alternative?
The alternative, and I wrote this down, and this is my alternate episode, the D goes back with them because the D can take the Romulan warbirds, they destroy them all, and then the D just stays there, and now we're 20 years in the past.
Wow.
For the next 4 seasons.
Right. And they just start kicking butt everywhere.
Not necessarily, but
right.
I mean, it's kind of like Discovery this season being so far in the future. You get a starship at a time. It's an interesting story. And I'm not saying Next Generation needed to do something that different. And because they're not serial, they probably wouldn't have handled it well. They'd just be going back to missions, which is dumb. You'd need to actually deal with it. But I feel like they just didn't want to go back in time 20 years. And also, this was an alternate version of them. If they'd gone back, would there to be 2 versions of everybody, 2 versions of the Enterprise? I don't know how that would work. That could create some type of weird.
Well, here's I was going to. All right, so I think it'll be too messy for the canon. I mean, it's you can't let writers get in there and just start kill the entire. I mean,
but then you needed to give us a reason why the D couldn't go back.
It's
it's messy for the writers.
No,
we needed a story reason.
It would be a sloppy thing to do for time travel. I mean, you should know better. But other than
they could save those people and their ideals. Garrett is willing to sacrifice their life. Picard should be willing to sacrifice his place in the timeline.
Okay, wait. All I want to say is that it could have been good for like maybe a couple of episodes, but I don't know if you could sustain it. But Steven, sorry, go ahead.
No, I have one serious thought, but I'll get to that. Are we allowed to talk about the D on this podcast?
Yeah, the big D. The big round D, the big bulbous D.
That one.
Story-wise, you could have had the D go back, fire some weapons and save them, and then just left the timeline thing open a little longer for it to return to its own time.
Well, if you had Worf on the D, they would just like tear everything up.
This just dawned on me, and this is not another D joke. Essentially, this is the same quandary as City on the Edge of Forever.
I mean, I guess, but I feel like there were ways out here that they didn't take. And I feel like, well, no, in that one, they couldn't have just taken... See, in that one, I kind of wanted Kirk to take Edith back to the future with him, and that would also maybe...
Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, so for the larger point again about what you can and can't do when you have like a franchise like this, for what Jimmy was saying, and this is great because you are, you're a writer and a impresario, yes, for ABD. You have the luxury of doing something like that. But if you have something that is this far-reaching, you can't let people can't take that kind of initiative. They can't just like go and tear everything up like that, unless they're Worf. But
yeah,
why not?
I was going there.
I understand why the writers can't. I'm saying that you would need to have a story reason why you can't.
All right. I mean, I guess I can see that. It's just you have to look ahead to that neat ending where things kind of get wrapped up in a way you can kind of go, oh yeah, well. But I don't know. I thought it was sufficient that Picard understood they couldn't just. It would be reckless at least to try to go back in time and do something like that.
Yeah, I get it from like I said, if I look at this from a City on the Edge of Forever perspective, it makes sense. But again, Spock in that instance was like there was no alternative, even though he always says there are alternatives. But here, I'm kind of with you, Jimmy. I think there are alternatives here, but I don't know what they are. But I think there are alternatives.
I do like that Garrett did not argue the point. Showed that she is a worthy Starfleet captain of, I need to go back to prevent this war and sacrifice myself. Okay, I'll do it. Yeah. And I think Kirk and Picard, while they each would have found the way out of it in terms of like being able to fix the timeline and survive, I think either of them would have been willing to die had they not been able to come up with a way out of it. Like that's what you think of as a captain.
And I guess her dying is a change from what originally happened. So, and I guess
no.
But she died here though. Didn't she die in?
But then you argue it always happened that way.
Yeah, there's the what's happened to happen thing.
Anybody got a message out from the Enterprise C in its final seconds to say Garrett's still alive. Oh, now she's dead.
I don't know. I mean, this is
if the Enterprise
controversial, but Flight 93 got messages out, and they were in the barely into the 21st century. So I think everybody. I think people on that ship would have got a message out.
But the ship only had 125 survivors. They probably all had jobs when they're at battle stations. I don't think they would have had time to get a message out. There weren't passengers. This was a military ship. Right. Everybody engaged in their duties. Whereas Flight 93, you've got passengers.
There was at least one coward on there that got in the escape pod.
But you think that one coward's going to waste their message saying, "Oh, our captain actually died in this time bubble before she died, before the rest of us died."
Or they're gonna
yeah, that was their message. I'm not going out like our captain. I'm out of here.
Wouldn't they be in hiding anyway? I mean, they wouldn't like go to the media and say, "Hey, I'm the coward who got out in an escape pod."
Speaking of like people filing reports like that or whatever, I want to know if Guinan ever filed a report about after everything was restored about what she knows happened or things happened.
That's a good question.
She's not Starfleet. If it was Picard, he'd file the report. But if she's the only one that remembers, does that ever get past anybody, or does she just keep that as one of her many mysterious secrets?
The latter.
That's what I'm thinking. But
yeah.
I did enjoy the moment where Crusher and Geordi are coming out of the meeting with Picard, and they're like, in this alternate timeline, I wonder if we'd even be here. And immediately they like move and the camera hits Yar.
Love it.
Yeah.
Like we all knew it, but still it was fun.
The meta stuff I did enjoy some of that.
Well, I mean, sorry, I'm not even sure I would call it meta so much as it was a good way to show her the gears clicking because the Guinan encounter before, she was trying to put her finger on what was going on. It was like,
yeah.
Is it Guinan the one that tells Yar that her death was empty without purpose? Yeah,
and
sure
I was
like, is this necessary?
No.
And then
Guinan was really cold.
Yeah, like I get it was necessary for her to be like, I want to have a death with purpose. So I get it from a story thing, but I was just like, that is harsh.
I think Guinan could have broke it a little gentler, but I guess when you're 600 years old, you just don't have time for that.
I can relate to.
Do we?
Or
all
do you have all
purpose-
the time for that because you're 600 years old?
Yeah.
Do we all want to have purposeful deaths? I don't know.
No, I want to die peacefully in my sleep at the age of 105. I don't want to go out in a blaze of glory.
Just guns in both hands. Just
no. I do not want a Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid in my life.
When I die, Colleen will have he's going to get a beach house. So that'll be my purpose.
With a hammock.
Yes.
One thing I did not really appreciate about this new timeline is Riker and Picard clearly did not get along. And he didn't even have a seat on the bridge. He had to lurk back behind Picard with Yar. But also, anytime they had contact, like, they clearly were not friends.
Yeah.
Which I think was an interesting choice. But again, that supports my theory of Riker shouldn't be there. He should have already gotten his own command and moved on.
Well, I mean,
that's probably why he was so angry. He's like, why am I still on this ship with this guy?
Who doesn't even like me or appreciate me?
So he probably wouldn't have had the space to be nurtured to the point where he could have done that in a wartime vessel. I mean, we saw the way they kind of gradually were able to take the time. Picard might not even have been the same kind of warm or had the time to grow himself to be able to nurture Riker to that point.
But Riker was offered his own command like the second he came on board. Like he wasn't. It wasn't because he served with Picard that he was offered a command.
Wasn't it? Didn't he have to have demonstrated something though through the course of the episodes? I felt like there was something they were citing that kind of.
I mean, I think he had already earned that when he was on the hood before he came to the Enterprise. But
then they get in the battle with the Klingon ships and they blow the one completely blows up. I'm always amazed in this era when a entire ship just because I always think it's like, well, what did they hit? Did they hit the warp drive or whatever? I mean, from a 2020 perspective, a rickety ship in space right now, hit it with anything, boom, the whole thing's gone. But by this time, I feel like there's got to be a heck of a shot.
You should have more damaged ships than destroyed ships.
Yes.
And instead, Star Trek goes for the destroyed. You're right. Yeah. I have never thought about that until right this second, but you're completely right.
Yeah.
Well, it is easier, I guess, but also those are the ships that have their replicators on. And that's what happens. That's why you use TKLs instead. Otherwise, it just
we need to cut power. Cut power to the replicators. I want ice cream. 10 Sundays. All right.
Only if
So
it's
the
chocolate
Klingon-
ice cream. Only if
So
it's
the
chocolate
Klingon-
ice cream.
That's
The
why we
Klingon
don't have
attack-
kids on these ships. Sorry.
The Klingon attack is when Garrett dies, and isn't there still another Klingon ship that just leaves?
Yeah, which was weird.
Klingons don't retreat.
I feel like there had to have been some precedent for. So you have two Starfleet starships,
But one's
and,
old.
but they were still a little bit overpowered.
Not really. The Enterprise C wasn't even in the fight.
Hmm.
Did you like the design of the Enterprise C? We didn't really talk about that.
I didn't.
I bought it as kind of like an early prototype of the Galaxy class.
Yeah, I think I did.
I can't remember what class it actually is, but it's similar to the Galaxy.
I had to see them side by side again.
It was
too.
more bulbous in the dome instead of flat. There were design elements that harkened back to earlier Starfleet vessels, so I liked the. It made sense to me in the evolution.
So at the end, Guinan talks to the whole bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm obsessed with the whole everybody talking. Can anyone get on that intercom? Hey,
Sure.
man. Hey, I'm in 10 forward. Hey, what? Shut up. I'm talking to him.
Now, see, in the regular timeline, they can't. It's known as the Riker rule because he did it too often. Yeah, I liked Castillo stepping up. We kind of already talked about the relationship. The kiss moment was nice. We talked about the Yar Guinan scene, which was great. The Yar Picard scene, though, was interesting too. I like that they didn't draw it out or make it a huge thing where she's just like, Guinan says I'm supposed to be dead. I want to go. And he's like, okay, then.
Yeah.
You know, like he didn't want her to go, but I like that they didn't draw it out. The scene where the warp core is damaged and it's getting ready to breach and Geordi's evacuating engineering is eerily similar to the film Star Trek Generations when the warp core does breach and they do have to evacuate. Like, I feel like when they eventually do this for real, they must have looked back at this scene or LeVar Burton just remembered acting it and just did it the same way. But it felt very much like the time it actually happens in the future. Oh, I like that Riker died in this too, because I was so frustrated with him being such a grumpy jerk. I was like, oh, good. I'm glad he's dead.
That I like that too. And not that I like Riker dead, but I just was like, oh, this now it's real, even though it's not real.
And nobody shed a tear at his death. And
no,
Picard
they just looked at him like
Picard did that really cool hop over the railing to go take the station. But I'm like, yeah, Picard's not sad he's dead. There's no love lost there.
There's no time for that.
No, they have too much time.
Too much time.
All the time because of I love that Castillo line that I had forgotten about when he's talking to Yar and they do that. I wish we had more time. It's like we have too much time to deal with.
Yeah.
You know, if Yar had survived, she probably would have become a pirate because her name Yar.
Yeah. Sigh.
There's no time for our sorrows, Admiral. We have to get the information out of this droid. That's another Star Wars thing.
I really like the Yar thing with Castillo and when she first showed up on the ship. It wasn't like this saccharine love story thing of her, like, oh my God, I'm glad you're here. Let's kiss. It's just, what are you doing here? I don't want you here. I care about you that much. Get out of here.
Yeah.
And then going through the pragmatic solution of her staying.
At least I don't remember. There wasn't a terrible music for all their scenes either, was there? There wasn't
No.
The time travel related stuff. First of all, the Guinan Yar scene, I liked it. I liked the way it played out. Just that kind of look of like, what are you looking at? You know what's happening there. The audience does. But it bothered me to the extent that it, like some other time travel movies, like a Back to the Future kind of method of things, just sort of like you jump ahead and something is different for this one person, and they don't quite explain how that would work. But whatever. The other thing is that the story overall worked with the time stream split theory, which I've really come to enjoy from the book that I was just doing. Ivanhoe Gambit. The author goes into that, and it seems to fit with the scientific consistency of things. As soon as that Enterprise C showed up through the wormhole, there was an immediate jump to what had happened here. So what had happened from our perspective, we flipped over to this other stream that the other branch that happened as a result of that happening, even though the other branch probably exists somewhere else. So in the book I did, one of the dangers they mentioned was the idea that if you let this split happen up here, you come back down and this timeline is now in danger of not existing once you go back and fix it. And if you send somebody back from here, they're going to have cross purposes.
Kind of like Back to the Future too.
Yep. Well, there's that as
And
well.
Doc Brown draws it on the chalkboard.
Yeah, and just the way that things are resolved, it made sense if you go back to that point and do something, and especially if Yar dies in the process. If she hadn't, then it would have just been like anyway.
I looked at the director real quick while you were talking, and David Carson, who directed it, also directed Star Trek Generations. So maybe that's why the scene's so similar.
Aha.
He also directed 4 episodes of Next Gen. This was his second of 4, and he directed 4 of DS9. But yeah, he could have matched those 2 scenes down the road. That would make sense. Writing wise, this one has all the heavy hitters. It's a story by Trent Christopher Ganino, and this is the only credit he has on IMDb, other than he played an extra in Star Trek 6, probably because he did this, I assume. And it was also written by our story by Eric Stillwell, who was a production assistant on Next Gen and Voyager. He's also got a story by credit for an episode of Voyager, but he's not an actor or a writer. He's a production assistant on the show. And so the two of them pitched the story, and then 4 of the big weights, Ira Stephen Burr, Richard Manning, Heinz Beimler, and Ron D. Moore, wrote the teleplay. So this episode wasn't just like a writer writing. This was 2 people pitched it, and then 4 of the heavyweights took it and massaged it.
Wow.
Which I find very interesting. That's not how it typically goes.
Well, as I was saying, I think that this, I mean, not your points earlier notwithstanding, I mean, which I do agree with, as I was saying, it's just, if you do something this big, or you have to be really kind of delicate about how you affect the rest of the canon with it. And I think that they did it scientifically well, and it fits. So
Alternate episode?
Mine's a Mirror 2 episode.
Even Mirror Year?
Yeah, I would like to see that, because I thought, oh, this is Picard's going to be a completely different Picard. I can't wait to see it. And I really wanted to see Deanna Troi, but yeah, so that's my alternate episode. I'll leave it at that.
How annoying was Wesley on a scale of 1 to 10?
I gave him a 1. I thought I might go higher, but
I gave him 1.
Yeah.
1. Don't even remember right now. I feel like I'm gonna have a different score next week, but yeah.
You got a better uniform. Who was your annoyance of the week?
Mine's Guinan. I know she redeemed herself later for me, but yeah, she's early on just, yeah.
I will not allow it. I'm going to type in everybody except Guinan. Mine's Riker. I get why he's got a chip on his shoulder if Picard's minimizing and ignoring him in the name of like staying focused on the war. But I was happy that this Riker died, and that's saying something.
Honestly, I wouldn't have had one if not for Jimmy's pitch about that. I mean, Riker makes sense to me.
Okay.
There was something a little off about that, and yeah,
he was useless. He shouldn't even have been in the episode, which would have helped with the things I was saying about.
Yeah.
Anyway, all he got to do was scowl and disagree with
Castillo. We didn't need Riker.
Yeah. Do you have a crush of the episode?
So, who is my current crush?
Mrs. Apgar. I would say you could probably pick Yar if you wanted her.
That was my question. Can I pick Tasha Yar?
She's not a lead this season, so I would say yes.
Then I am picking Tasha Yar.
Mrs. Apgar was the Mrs. Robinson scientist.
Oh, she was.
Oh, that's right.
That Riker had the affair with.
I gotta walk it back. I'm sticking with Gina Heck. I'm sticking with Mrs. Apgar. I gotta walk that back.
Yeah. I'm sticking with Apgar as well. Keith did not choose Mrs. Apgar. He chose Tana, the assistant.
Huh. Interesting. I was thinking I would go with the captain in this one.
Yeah, I like the captain too.
Oh, you want to switch to Garrett?
Yeah.
I'm going to stick with Mrs. Apgar.
I completely forgot. I had already decided I was going to go with Captain Garrett until Keith said something. So I am switching to Rachel Garrett. I liked her.
Yeah, I did.
Thank you, Keith.
Well, thank you for Riker.
Not that.
You're welcome. So we want to start at the bottom on ranking this episode?
Wow.
That was a joke.
I figured, but nope. I loved it. It should go in the middle somewhere.
You think the middle?
Top middle. I mean, I can't remember
middle?
what's in the middle. Yeah, I really liked it.
Let's start with last week's episode because that's top middle. Matter of perspective.
The Apgar episode. So
yes.
Oh man.
I mean, I griped about a few things, but I think this is better than that.
Yeah, I like this one better.
This, I mean, yeah, I will say that it felt big to me in certain ways, at least. And I'm a sucker for time travel episodes.
Above that's Deja Q. Deja Q is number 4 right now. That's where we're at. Yeah.
I think I like this one better, but I think it's really close.
I'm with you.
Same here.
Above that is The Price.
That's
is the price really worth it?
That's the Journey of Babel episode, right?
Nice.
Negotiating the
Troy falls into the affair and stuff. Yeah. I like this.
Oh
wow.
Ah, man.
It was we were too busy ripping to hear.
Me. Yeah, that's close for me. What's the next one?
We have to ask.
We have to.
Who watches the Watchers? That's the proto-Vulcans.
Oh, yeah.
Man.
God.
This is where recency bias is kind of coming into play for me, at least.
So here's the thing. I think both The Price and Who Watches the Watchers are more tightly written episodes. And yet, because of the things in this episode, the Enterprise C, Yar, I'm inclined to put it above because of the place it holds in the franchise, even though those episodes are...
I'm trying to decide how much I like this. I mean, I did like this episode a lot. So.
Isn't it funny? Because I think both of you started off saying something to the effect that you liked it, but you didn't think it was a great episode.
Yeah,
but it feels
I'm trying to decide. Yeah,
like that good.
So I have some problems with some of the overarching structural things, but I think the character moments were solid, and I think what it does for the franchise is relatively solid, if that makes sense.
I thought you guys would talk me down, but I think the conversation made me go the other way.
Yeah.
I really think this is...
I could put it anywhere in this top three or four spaces. If it were just me, I'd probably put it at number 4, because like I said, I think those 3 episodes are better, more tightly written. But in terms of its importance to the franchise, it would probably be number 1 of these. So if we want to find somewhere in the middle of that, I'm fine with that. But
yeah, because this is that recency bias, because I don't remember loving The Defector, but I know I liked it. And I know I loved the Matt McCoy, the Journey to the Price. Yeah, I could live with it at 2 or 3.
Yeah. I was close to saying number 1, but I'm trying to think about this for a moment. I'm at 1 at the moment.
You're at 1.
Yeah.
Steven's at 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3. Although even that's a tough call for me to put it above. I really like The Price a lot too, for different reasons. But yeah,
I think just because I'm so torn, and because you guys are 1 and 3, I think I'm just going to go right in the middle at 2, and I think that's where we should put it.
I'll be happy.
Just kind of, I think we all agree on pluses and minuses of this. So it is below The Defector, but it's up there.
I feel like if we saw The Defector like next week, I'd probably be Defector number 1. It's just something. It kind of
Well, Defector's still number 1, so at least for another week, because next week we have The Offspring. After returning from a cybernetics conference to the Enterprise, Data creates his own child, much to the chagrin of his captain and without regards to the ramifications with Starfleet. This is another one of those iconic episodes that's frequently played in clip shows and often talked about and remembered. So
it's The Offspring?
The Offspring.
Yeah, I was...
And I have to stop.
I like it almost as much as I like The Onfall.
Oh, God.
Should I have said On Autumn? Would that have made it better?
Maybe. No, that would have been too on the nose. I think that really works.
And on that note, live long.
Stay in your own time it's probably for the best.
Yeah, you should keep them separated.
It's All Been Done presents
Who's Got the Time?